Hello everybody, this is World Bee Day, 20th of May, and I'm sitting together with Jeff Pettis, the president of Apimondia in Rome, where there is the headquarters of Apimondia.
Yes, and I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to be here on World Bee Day and to share some conversation with you about the importance of bees around the globe. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, what do you, in your opinion, what is most important on the political level for us beekeeper?
First, just to be at the table, to be present when decisions are made about the environment, or about farming, about anything that they consider the beekeeper and the needs of the beekeeper and the good that the bees do in the environment for biodiversity and things. So yeah.
Are we not on the table?
Not always.
Not always.
We are, but we don't often speak with a common voice because there's always disagreement among beekeepers. So within a certain state, they'll have two different competing bee associations. So it'd be nice to have a united voice, but of course it can be difficult. Maybe Apimondia could play that role, but yeah.
I think so. I think the different opinions between beekeeping associations are not so important. Important is to be present at all.
Yeah.
To be present on a local level, on a national level, on the European level, and also in the international level.
Yeah.
So, where is Apimondia joining, discussing with the political developments? Where is the right place for Apimondia to influence?
I think we try to work at the not like within Italy or France or Germany, but with the European Commission, or in North America, perhaps with Canada, US, and also with FAO, because FAO is about food production across the globe. So trying to work at the international level, but of course most decisions, big decisions happen like at the European Commission or within places like that. So we have just now signed today, on World Bee Day, we've signed a memorandum of understanding with the FAO. We were already working with them. So we're working to make sure bees are part of any decisions, and also how we can use bees for the environment, for biodiversity, and to promote better livelihoods, reduce poverty, and end hunger. So bees are critical to the food supply, obviously.
You know, these are the 17 sustainable goals of the United Nations,
yeah.
But these are our sustainable goals.
Yeah.
And if I ask anybody in Germany, can you tell me the 17 sustainable goals? Nobody knows it.
I know.
So why? Is this so? And what should we change to identify with these goals?
Yeah. Well, again, awareness, just try to raise awareness and try to get better communication. I made a small speech with the Director General of FAO today, and I tried to say three things. One was ending hunger, and that's through pollination and food production. Poverty, relieving poverty, because bees are good for, in developing world, that you don't need land, you don't need very low input to start beekeeping, so they're a great development pool for ending poverty. And then the third one was biodiversity, just they're good for biodiversity. Yeah, there's 17 and they go on, and yeah, you're right, most people aren't aware of them.
Speaking about biodiversity, we had recently a study of the reduction of the biomass in Germany of about 75%, more or less, 2 or 3%.
The insects.
Yeah, the insects, the Krefeld study.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other studies showing similar developments.
Yeah.
So we have a disastrous situation in our biodiversity, and we have almost no international conference focusing this, like the climate International Coalition of Climate Change. Have these regularly sessions?
Yep.
There is a session on biodiversity. Are we part of it? Are we influencing these conferences?
We as Apimondia have been invited to work with the biodiversity group in FAO, and so we hope we're at the table. But I agree with you. It's we'll say invertebrates, or mostly insects, and yeah, it's been a vast reduction, and it's almost impossible to think that a lot of that is not driven by pesticides in the water and in the farming environment. So we know some of the things we can do to change it, but I agree. It's think about, I actually am a birder. I keep bees. I'm a beekeeper first. I keep bees. I'm birds. I love birds. All those insects are feeding birds. So if we don't have the insects, the bird community goes down. So yes, we need to be at the table.
I think we need somehow an enormous movement to raise attention for this problem, because this is affecting our livelihood.
Yep. And the whole ecosystem. I mean, insects fill that middle niche in the food supply, and without them, it would be disastrous. I'm meeting with FAO later today about biodiversity, and so we hope to engage a better dialogue. But yeah, when they met 2 years ago and they came out with a report, I don't think bees and other pollinators were so well represented, and I think we are now. They're reaching out to us. They're reaching out to Apimondia to include the ecosystem services that bees provide, especially in the agricultural system. So, but I agree with you. The climate change thing meets regularly. There's also a lot of concern about climate change in plants, how the plants will change, less so about the bees and things like that, the influence.
We should really focus on this and change it.
We did a 2-year study from the United Nations on the IPBES, International Pollinator Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services Report in 2016. And there we took 2 years and looked at what were the pollinators doing, how well were they doing. But we need to build on that and have an international dialogue that meets regularly about what we can do to reverse the trends. Yeah.
Let's have a look to a discussion which is already rising, the congruence between a honeybee and wild bee and wild insects. Of course, there is a certain amount of nectar, of sugar and pollen available, but how delicate is the congruence between bees, honeybees, and beekeeper bringing bees in certain regions where the honeybees take the sugar away from the wild bees?
Right. But I think in general that there's room for both. In general, there may be very special areas of the world that warrant protection, and let's say large amounts of managed bees shouldn't be moved into those areas. But I'm talking about small areas of land. I think in general the carrying capacity of the land is sufficient for the managed honeybees and the wild bees, and we actually should be working more together to improve the environment, as opposed to, so now we fight among ourselves, the wild bee people and the managed bee people, we fight, and we should be taking that fight to improve the resources, the environment that we live in.
Why not putting these two groups together and trying to find a consensus, how to communicate?
Yeah, it would be good. I think, I know I've worked more in North America, and there the argument is very valid. Honeybees shouldn't be here. They're exotic. They never were in North America. Here in Europe, I mean, they're part of the natural ecosystem. They should be here. And, yeah.
So for European circumstances, you say that there is normally no conflict between honeybees and wild bees?
I think it would be rare. It would be only when there's a large number of managed commercial colonies placed in one area. And I think I know there's some work. Henri in France has done some work trying to understand what's the carrying capacity for managed bees in an area. But I don't think normally it's succeeded, that normally they have an impact. But there probably are conditions where if you move a large number of managed bees into a small area, there could be a temporary competition. But they're normally there and then they're moved out. So, yeah.
During the main harvest, availability of nectar, there is certainly no competition.
No, I think springtime, there's so abundant resources that there's not the competition. When I've talked between the two groups, the honeybee keepers and the wild bee people, and they say, what can we do to improve the environment? Plant things that bloom in the summer and early fall, because springtime is, in temperate areas, springtime is abundance. There's no limited resource, in my opinion. It's the summertime where we need more. We need more diversity in the summertime.
Let's speak about honey production. In Germany and in Europe in general, we have about 20 to 30% self-sufficiency.
Okay.
And the rest we import. In Germany we have 22%.
Okay.
And where do we import the honey from? From China, from Ukraine, from South America, from Mexico.
Yeah.
And the question is, and the honey is coming into Germany very, very cheap. You can buy a kilo of honey, of Chinese honey for $1.30, for example. You can never produce honey for such a price in Europe.
Yep.
So what do you think about the capacity of increasing the honey production in Europe? Why are we not able at the moment to produce our honey ourselves?
Maybe limited resources, or maybe if the buying public is better educated and they insist on buying local German or Swiss produced honey, then the beekeeper can get a higher price and drive. But also then we have to worry about labeling. Then you get into fraud issues. But educating the public to want that local honey, and then of course hopefully then more beekeepers would get into it, and the profit would be better. But there's a huge issue of cheap honey on the market. And why is Ukraine, if you look at the exports, Ukraine didn't increase their beekeeping that much. Ukraine, the exports have gone through the roof. It's all shipment from other parts of the world into Ukraine, relabeled and shipped into Europe and other places. We import from the Ukraine in the U.S.
Well,
but
Ukrainian or Chinese honey or whatever is not necessarily bad honey. It could be a good honey, cheaper because the labor cost is smaller. Do you really believe in the market? Will the demand of the consumer change the market, or do we need taxes on cheap honey to protect the local production, the national production?
It maybe work on both. I know in the U.S. we got what we call anti-dumping, and the Chinese honey we say was coming in under the cost of production, way under the cost, and so they they actually banned Chinese honey for a while. They either ban it or put a tariff on it, as you suggest, to level the playing field. But I also think the consumer demand, well-labeled local honey, and you see the difference in the price, and that can help. You probably need both.
We were speaking with German honey packers.
Yep.
And they were explaining us that the labeling is strict enough. They are not interested in changing the labeling system, because foreign honey is also a good honey, and they need the system like it is to blend the honey from one year to another to keep the taste and the color.
Yeah. Well, again, so that's the mass-produced honey for the mass market. I have no problem in baking and things like that, but the honey that is consumed, for its taste and things, that should all be local, and it should have that variety. It shouldn't always look amber. That they try for that one color, that kind of middle, not white, not dark, but kind of amber, and they blend Mexico, Argentina, whatever, to get that. And they heat it. They heat it too much in the processing, so it doesn't retain the odors and the flavor. I know we face the same thing, that we import like 2/3 of our honey in the U.S. Well, we have enough land. We could be self-sufficient, but we're not. And I think it's because of the cheap price.
So this is the first point, the cheap price.
Yep.
And then in Europe we have different policies of subsidizing the professional beekeeper.
Okay.
Germany, you get almost nothing.
Okay.
In Italy, you get 50% of the investment, for
Really?
example.
Really?
If you make a building for 1 million,
Yeah.
you get 500,000 back.
Nice.
So then you can invest
Yeah.
in a professional beekeeping.
Yeah.
And how is it in the States?
We have a thing for each year for the crop. So we have a disaster relief for the crop itself, and a little bit for the bees. If your bees die at an excessive rate, above like 17 or 20% mortality, you can get compensated for the dead bees and restock your bees. Yeah. And the other is if you have a disastrous honey year, and because they take a 10-year average, and you have production records, you have a disaster, you can get relief for the honey, for lost honey.
This is funny.
Right. Yeah, well, you like that.
No, the other one, that beekeeper becomes subsidies if a certain amount of bees are dying. So this is something
it promotes bad beekeeping.
Like money to keep the beekeeper silent. Why are the bees dying? Too much bad varroa management or too much pesticides?
I think they do a pretty good job on varroa generally.
On varroa.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of
problem of queens.
Queens are a problem. The commercial beekeepers normally move a lot. They do maybe 3 to 5 pollination contracts.
So what?
Well, it's hard on the bees, and then they need to find a good pasture between the pollination for the bees to rebuild a bit. Some of the crops are really watermelon, beans, and cucurbits, things like that. They're not that good. The bees don't do well. They even sometimes feed on those pollination contracts.
Okay, that's something different.
Yeah.
If you bring bees for pollination,
Yeah.
You have to push them somehow to
stimulate them.
develop.
Yeah.
But if bees die because too much contact to pesticides and neonicotinoids, should we not rather confront the agriculture system with this problem instead of taking money from the state?
Well, we're knocking on the door. We complain to our Environmental Protection Agency and to others about the labeling of the pesticides. They should not be used during bloom, whatever the crop, and things. But no, it's an ongoing problem. We are pushing, but who has the best lawyers? The agricultural production system.
But Apimondia has excellent lawyers, hasn't it? So what is the role of Apimondia in these kind of problems?
We try to provide information and guidance to sustainable beekeeping, sustainable practices in agriculture, like more organic agricultural production. But I feel we don't have enough voice. We should have a better voice in these arguments. So
if you could wish 3 things for Apimondia, what or 4 or 5 things? I don't know how many wishes you have.
Okay.
What would be most important for Apimondia during the next years?
I think to work with our members who are all over the globe, our member beekeeping associations, and have the ability and the resources to speak to the European Commission, speak to FAO, and be recognized as the authoritative voice on beekeeping issues around the globe. So now, you get information from different sources, and I just think we need to raise our awareness. We're recognized for our meeting every 2 years, and then scientists come together, beekeepers come together. It's a great event. But I think we're in a position to do more on things like legislation, and even we have a stance on honey fraud, and we're developing something on. We don't think that bees should be genetically modified. I mean, there's people wanting to create a super bee with gene. We don't think that's necessary. We can make progress with normal bee breeding. So things like that, and also just on the pesticide issue in agriculture.
But how would you achieve it?
We need more resources. We need to develop a plan to fundraise, I guess. Yeah. And we don't have that at the moment. We're looking to hire a communications expert.
So you need more money?
More money? Yeah.
Lerne richtig imkern mit Online-Kursen nach guter imkerlicher Praxis der Professor Ludwig Armbruster-Imkerschule. Wir begleiten unsere Fördermitglieder durchs Bienenjahr mit einer wöchentlichen Online-Sprechstunde. Unsere Kurse sind die ideale Ergänzung zum Anfängerkurs im Imkerverein oder zur Praxisarbeit mit einem Imkerpaten. www.armbruster-imkerschule.de